He claimed he'd changed, then slammed my son into a table on Super Bowl Sunday. My revenge sent him to prison. Imagine watching your own brother, a man you desperately wanted to believe had changed, slam your innocent 11-year-old son into a table, sending him to the ER, blood gushing from his forehead. And then, moments later, see that same man grab his own 9-year-old son by the hair, simply for daring to defend his cousin. I've lived that nightmare. What I did next changed everything, not just for him, but for my entire family. Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan Miller, a 41-year-old software developer in Denver, and this isn't just a story about a bad Super Bowl Sunday. It's about a painful truth. Some people are such brilliant actors, they can fool an entire family. It was Super Bowl Sunday earlier this year. Around 8:30 a.m., I was brewing coffee when my phone rang. It was my dad, Thomas Miller, his voice brimming with an almost unsettling enthusiasm. "Ethan, get Claire and Lucas over here this afternoon for the Super Bowl. The whole family's coming together." Before I could even respond, his voice dropped conspiratorially. "Ryan wants to see everyone. It's been 7 months, son. He hasn't caused any trouble. He's definitely changed. It's time for us to reconnect." Ryan. That name made my grip tighten on my coffee mug. Ryan Miller, my 35-year-old younger brother. I always hoped he'd make something of himself. He was smart, quick, charming when he wanted to be. But somewhere along the way, he chose a different path. It started with online gambling, a few $100s for fun, then thousands. By the time I found out, he owed over $42,000, mostly high-interest loans. But the money wasn't the scary part. It was who Ryan became when he lost big, or when he'd had a few beers. He'd vent his frustration on anyone nearby, usually the kids. My son, Lucas, once had his ear twisted purple just for dropping a glass of water while Ryan was watching the scores. And Noah, Ryan's own 9-year-old son, would literally shrink whenever his father yelled. Looking into that kid's eyes, I knew he'd seen too much. Then, 7 months before Dad's call, everything fell apart. Ryan was arrested for disturbing the peace and fighting at a casino on Federal Boulevard. Dad had to bail him out at 2:45 a.m. That night, he laid down an ultimatum: treatment or out of the house. For the first time, Ryan hung his head and agreed. He enrolled in anger management in Aurora and a gambling support group. And slowly, fragile traces of change appeared. He called the whole family, even me, to apologize. He got a part-time job at an O'Reilly Auto Parts. Dad repeated it like a mantra every time we spoke. I live with him every day. He doesn't gamble. He doesn't drink. I've never seen him so calm. I wanted to believe it. Who wouldn't want their brother to change? After hanging up, I turned to Claire, my wife, a Walgreens pharmacist. She's the kind of person who says little but sees through everything. She grimaced when she heard Dad's invitation. "I don't know," she said slowly. "Something still doesn't feel right. But if you think we should go, then let's go." Lucas was standing in the kitchen doorway, ears pricked, listening to every word. He's 11, small for his age, and so I sometimes worry about him getting picked on. When he heard Uncle Ryan's name, he took a step closer, worried eyes on me. "Is Uncle Ryan really different, Dad?" he whispered. "I remember the last time he—" The phrase trailed off, but I understood. I crouched down to his eye level, put my hand on his shoulder. "He went to treatment, buddy. Grandpa says he's completely different. It'll be okay." I told Lucas that, but really I was trying to convince myself. Giving someone a second chance is the right thing to do. That's what I'd always believed. But some people just refuse to change. No matter how many chances you give them, they just learn how to wear a mask better. We drove from Denver to Dad's place in Lakewood, about 30 minutes via West Colfax. I kept checking on Lucas in the rearview mirror. He and Noah sat silently, hands folded, staring out the window. I knew what he was thinking. At a red light at the Sheridan Crossing, I turned back. "Lucas," Stay close to Mom and Dad today. Okay. If you feel uncomfortable, let me know right away. He nodded. Then his face lit up. Dad, will Noah be there? I nodded, hearing his cousin's name. Lucas's mood brightened instantly. The two are barely 3 years apart and inseparable. If there was any bright spot in my family's mess, it was the bond between those two kids. We arrived at 2:30 p.m. Dad's house, a single-story home at the end of a quiet lane with a wide, green lawn and a detached garage. Everything seemed idyllic. I almost forgot why I'd avoided this place for the past year. And then the first surprise. Ryan stepped out of the front door to meet us. In 35 years of being brothers, Ryan had never once greeted visitors at the door. He was always the type to lounge on the sofa, waiting for others to come to him. But that day, he stood on the porch with a brilliant smile, arms stretched wide as if to embrace the whole world. He approached me, hugged me tight. Big brother, thanks for coming. I awkwardly patted his back. Then, Ryan released me and dropped to one knee in front of Lucas. Lucas automatically took a half step back, but Ryan didn't seem to notice. He looked at my son with kind eyes I'd never seen before and murmured, Lucas, I'm so sorry about the past. I was wrong. I promise I'll never act like that again. Okay. Lucas glanced at me, pleading for permission. I gave a subtle nod. The boy looked back at his uncle, pursed his lips, and nodded silently. Just then, a small shadow shot out of the house. Noah, Ryan's son, rushed to hug Lucas. Lucas, you're finally here. Come play football with me in the backyard. I stared at Noah, astonished. No more distant face, eyes avoiding contact. He was beaming, cheeks flushed, bouncing with energy, like a typical 9-year-old. 7 months had truly made a difference. Dad came onto the porch, clapped me on the shoulder, his voice full of triumph. I told you so. He's completely different. Just believe me. Claire stood beside me, observing. She leaned in. I'm starting to believe it, she whispered. Maybe we were too worried. The party unfolded exactly as a family gathering should. Dad grilled burgers, filling the air with the scent of meat and charcoal. There was loud conversation, laughter. The pre-game show blared on TV. Lucas and Noah raced across the yard with footballs, their clear laughter making my heart lighten. But about an hour later, the mood began to shift. Ryan's old friends started arriving, for 5 of them. I recognized some faces, guys he used to gamble with. They brought cases of beer, clapped each other on the back with loud laughs, and took over the couch. Ryan initially was holding a Coke. Then, one of his friends thrust a beer into his hand, laughing. Ryan hesitated for a second, then popped the top. Just one, he mumbled, perhaps to himself. 1 became 2, and 2 became 3. And then I saw it. Ryan started checking his phone, compulsively. Every few minutes, he'd stare at the screen, fingers swiping, his brow furrowing, his face progressively tightening, jaw clenching. I didn't need to be a genius. He was gambling, right there at the family party. 7 months of treatment. 7 months of transformation. It was all just a perfect performance. Claire saw it before I did. She pulled me into a corner of the kitchen, her eyes fixed on mine, whispering urgently, I see it. He's gambling. Look at his face. Just like the old days. Let's leave right now. I nodded, glancing out the backyard window. Lucas and Noah were rolling on the grass, giggling wildly. I couldn't stomach tearing my son away just yet. Give the kids another 20 minutes, I told Claire gently. We'll slip out quietly. No fuss. I figured 20 minutes wouldn't make a difference. But for a gambling addict who's losing, 20 minutes is an eternity. In that eternity, everything fell apart. I later found out Ryan had lost over $9,000 in those 3 quiet hours. $9,000. After 7 months of treatment, it all came crashing down. As the game entered the second half, the air in the living room grew heavy. Ryan still gripped his phone, face tight. Then he stood, grabbed a few beer cans, and walked onto the back porch. Maybe he wanted to escape everyone's gaze. Maybe he wanted distance to truly see the numbers consuming him on the screen. From my vantage point near the kitchen door, I watched him settle into a plastic chair, the case of beer at his feet. His eyes were glued to his phone, fingers swiping relentlessly. With each swipe, his face shifted color, strained, then pale, then in furious red. One of his friends came onto the porch, clapped him on the shoulder, chuckling mockingly. "Hey, I thought you quit? Lost a lot already today, huh?" Ryan gritted his teeth. "Shut up," he growled. The friend threw up his hands in surrender and retreated inside. Ryan sat alone, his hand shaking as he drank his 5th or 6th beer. I looked at Claire. She nodded. "Time to leave." We went into the kitchen, quickly washing a few plates and placing them politely in the sink. Claire was washing, and I turned, ready to head to the yard to call Lucas. I glanced out the white kitchen window and saw Noah standing in the middle of the lawn, ball at his feet, about 9 meters from the back porch. He was grinning, yelling to Lucas, "Watch me kick hard, Lucas! Can you catch it?" Lucas stood near the fence on the other side, hands raised, ready. Noah backed up a few paces, then ran forward, swung his leg and kicked with all his might. But the grass was still damp from last night's rain. Noah's foot slipped just as it touched the ball. The ball didn't fly toward Lucas. It veered off course, whirling straight back toward Ryan on the back porch. Everything happened in a second. The ball slammed into the beer case under Ryan's feet. Half-drunk, cans splashed everywhere, soaking his clothes. Then the ball rebounded up and smacked Ryan squarely in the face. Ryan's scream ripped across the yard. It wasn't a scream of physical pain, but the raw, guttural cry of someone who'd been pushed too far at once. Losing bets, shame, and now this, hit in the face in front of everyone. Everything built up, erupting in one instant. Ryan sprang out of his chair, bloodshot eyes sweeping the yard for the offender. Noah was still in the middle of the lawn, face white as a sheet. But Lucas had already moved closer, standing directly in front of Ryan. My son hadn't even registered what was happening. I saw Ryan charging toward my son. Without thinking, I threw open the kitchen window and leaped out. My feet hit the ground, and I sprinted toward the kids. 35 feet. Just 35 feet. But I couldn't get there in time. Ryan's hand moved up, then down across Lucas's face. The smack boomed across the yard. Lucas flew backward, colliding with the corner of the porch's outdoor table. He fell onto the wooden deck, lying still. Blood dripped from a wound on his forehead, staining the porch floor drop by drop. Lucas lay there, wide-eyed, unable to cry. He was in shock. My legs were still pumping. My heart felt like it was going to burst. But before I could reach them, Noah's scream cut through the air. The 9-year-old dashed onto the porch, jumped in, grabbed his father's hand. "No, Dad, it wasn't him. I kicked the ball. It's my fault." Ryan turned to face his own son. At that moment, his face bore no resemblance to a father. He gritted his teeth, stared at Noah, and hissed, "You're defending him? You made me lose face in front of my friends." He grabbed Noah's hair and jerked his head back. Noah wailed in agony, his small hands clawing at his father's hand, his voice strangled. "Dad, it hurts. It hurts so badly." Ryan's friends, finally moving, scrambled out of the house, stopping at the back door watching. Nobody moved. A group of grown men, standing still, seeing a 9-year-old being pulled by his own father, and no one dared to speak. My own father ran out of the living room, halting at the entrance, his face pale as he saw the scene. Ryan, the son he thought had changed, stood there like a stranger. Dad opened his lips, but no words came out. Perhaps he finally realized the last 7 months had been a performance, and he the most gullible audience member. I burst onto the porch, only a few feet from Ryan. I didn't see my brother anymore. I saw someone who had just harmed two innocent children, someone I had repeatedly given chances to, and who had stomped on every single one of them. My body reacted before my mind could think. My left arm curled around Lucas. My right hand gripped Noah's arm, pulling him closer to me. And at the same instant, I kicked Ryan's chest with all my power. He lurched backward, losing his grip on Noah's hair. The boy collapsed against me, trembling all over. I gripped both children tightly in my arms, taking a few steps back from Ryan. Claire appeared moments later. She rushed over, knelt, and took Lucas from my arms. Her eyes turned crimson as she saw the blood on his forehead, but her voice remained calm. "Lucas, look at me. Can you hear me?" My son blinked a few times, his lips moving, whispering, "Mom, it hurts. It hurts so much." Hearing him, my chest felt like it was suffocating. My son lay there, bleeding, and I hadn't protected him. I had trusted Ryan. I had brought my son here. Noah was still clinging to me, face buried in my chest, his shoulders shaking. Claire reached out, drew my nephew close, and hugged both children. Noah looked up at his aunt, tears streaming down his cheeks, his voice faltering. "Aunt Claire, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help Lucas." Claire held Lucas with one arm and stroked Noah's hair with the other. Her voice was soft but laced with steel. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Nobody can blame you. Do you hear me?" Ryan's snarl from behind made me turn. He was back on his feet, face purple-red, pointing at the children. "Look at this. They're putting on an act." Noah kicked the ball at my face. "I'm the victim here." I walked right up to his face, my hands clenched into fists. My voice dropped, so low and cold I barely recognized it. "You are 35 years old. You just hit an 11-year-old kid. He's bleeding from the head. You just snatched your own 9-year-old son's hair. And now you're standing here, claiming to be the victim." Ryan took a step back, but his mouth wouldn't stop. "I'm in therapy. I just lost control for a second." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "The entire family believed you had changed. This is it." Dad hurried down from the porch, walking fast toward us. He raised both hands, his voice shaky but firm. "Enough! Both of you stop. This can be straightened out." I didn't turn to face him. I stated clearly to Claire, "Take both kids to the car right now. Lucas and Noah. Drive directly to Children's Hospital on Colorado Boulevard. Don't stop for anything." Claire nodded, helped both children to their feet, and hurried toward the car. Noah took a few steps, then stopped, turning to look back at his father. I will never forget the expression in that boy's eyes. Half terror, half emptiness, like a child who has lost something he will never get back. Ryan saw his kid going. He surged forward, yelling, "Stop! You have no right to take my boy anywhere." I moved in front of him, one palm pressing hard on his chest, my words grinding between my teeth. "Your son? Do you believe you deserve to call him your son?" Dad rushed up, grabbing my arm, pleading, "Ethan, he's your brother. He's recuperating. Everyone blunders from time to time. You can't." I snatched my hand away from him, turning to gaze directly into Dad's eyes. My rage was seething, yet my voice was as icy as a winter storm. "Are you recuperating?" I asked bluntly. "Your grandchild is bleeding over there. Is that your notion of recovery? You convinced the whole family that my brother had changed. So what are you calling this?" Dad's mouth opened, then closed. Not one word. He stood there, shoulder sinking. I turned back to Ryan, tightened my grip on his collar, and pulled him close to my face. My voice sank to a whisper, cold and menacing. "You're coming with me to the garage. Right now." He struggled, but I held tighter. I dragged him over the grass, toward the garage. His friends stood there silently, as if they'd lost their voices. Dad stood like a shadow. Nobody dared to move. I shoved Ryan inside the garage and slammed the door shut. I won't tell you what happened in the next 5 minutes. Some things don't need words to be understood. Just know that when that garage door opened, Ryan was still lying on the concrete floor. And for the first time in his life, he knew what it felt like to be the weaker one. Before I unlocked the door to leave, I looked down at Ryan, curled up on the cold concrete. I crouched, speaking in a low, quiet voice. You should feel grateful. I'm grateful I stopped. I'm grateful I'm still allowing you to walk out of here on your own. He didn't respond, just lay there, breathing heavily. I stood up, gave him one last look. But if you touch Lucas or Noah one more time, even one hair on their heads, I won't stop. Do you understand? Ryan nodded, eyes still down, refusing to meet mine. After that lesson, I opened the garage door. After the dimness of the garage, the afternoon sun shone brightly. I stepped out, sweat beading on my forehead, both hands throbbing and trembling. Not out of fear, but because I'd had to use every ounce of control to stop myself. Dad stood at the door, face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. He peered at me, then into the garage, his voice quivering. Ethan, what did you do in there? I didn't respond. I walked right past him. Ryan's friends huddled near the porch, one man holding his phone, stammering something. It looked like he was about to call the police. I paused, turning to stare directly into each of their eyes. At 6 feet 1 inch, about 195 pounds, after 25 years of gym and running, I knew how I looked right then. I yelled at them, "Get out! Get out!" before I changed my mind. The man with the phone gulped and shoved it back into his pocket. Dad ran after me, grabbing my arm, yelling, "Ethan, I'm asking you, what did you do to him?" I stopped, faced him, my voice ice cold. "Go look in the garage yourself. Don't ask me." I yanked my arm free and walked straight to my car. I didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, and drove away. Behind me was Dad's house, my brother lying in the garage with a broken nose, and all the illusions about family I tried to hold on to. Ahead of me at Children's Hospital, my wife was waiting with 2 children, my son and my nephew. When I arrived 25 minutes after Claire, Lucas was on a bed, his forehead already neatly bandaged. Claire sat beside him, one hand holding my son's, the other arm around Noah's shoulders. The boy sat still as a statue, eyes fixed on the floor, gripping his cousin's hand tightly, refusing to let go. Dr. Harris, the night doctor, came out to greet me. 6 stitches for Lucas, she said, no signs of brain injury. I breathed a sigh of relief, but what she said next made me freeze. Dr. Harris looked at Noah, then pulled me aside, her voice dropping. "Mr. Miller, I want to ask about the other boy." When the nurse approached him, he curled up and raised his hands to cover his face. That's a reflex of a child used to being hit. "I recommend we examine him." I nodded, and what they found after that made my blood boil all over again. Multiple bruises on Noah's back and arms, in various stages of healing. Some yellow, almost gone. Others still purple-black, only a few days old. Dr. Harris looked at me, her voice heavy. "This isn't from today. This child has been enduring this for a long time. By regulation, we have to report this to the police." I called Noah's mother, Amanda, right away. She and Ryan had divorced 3 years ago, and Noah lived with her, but had to go to his father's house on weekends due to a court order. When Amanda heard my story, she sobbed over the phone. I knew something wasn't right. I saw bruises on my son, but every time I asked, he said he fell playing football. I suspected it, but he wouldn't tell the truth. The court needed direct testimony from him. But Noah continued to protect his father. "I couldn't do anything," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He's scared. He's scared that if he tells, his father will make it worse." I understood. A 9-year-old trapped between fear and a twisted love for the man who brought him into this world. Noah buried his face in his mother's chest, his voice shaking as he asked, "Mom, Do I have to go back to Dad's house anymore? Amanda drove to the hospital that night. When she walked in, Noah saw his mother and cried out loud for the first time. She rushed to hug him tight, tears soaking his shirt. Amanda held him closer, kissed the top of his head. "Never again," she whispered. "I promise you." Around 1 a.m., the police arrived to take statements. I told them everything, including what happened in the garage. The officer finished writing, looked up, and asked, "Mr. Miller, do you regret what you did?" "I regret believing he changed. I regret bringing my son there. As for what happened in the garage, no." Ryan was arrested that night on charges of injuring 2 child victims. I received a warning for my actions in the garage, but was given leniency because I was protecting children in an emergency. The next morning, Dad called, his voice cold as ice. "Are you satisfied now? Your brother's been arrested. You destroyed this family." I answered through the phone, my voice steady. "Have you seen Noah's medical records? In 7 months, you said Ryan had changed. During those 7 months, your grandson was still being beaten on a regular basis. Did you ever ask the kid a question? Did you ever look at him?" After a lengthy silence, I continued, "I don't think so. Goodbye, Dad," and hung up. That night, Lucas lay next to me on the hospital bed. He turned over, his voice tiny. "Dad, Noah used to tell me he was scared to go home to Uncle Ryan, but I thought Uncle was better because Grandpa said so." "Why did Grandpa lie, Dad?" I held my son close, my throat tight. I didn't know how to respond. An 11-year-old saw the truth, while all of us adults ignored it. For months later, I sat in the Denver County courtroom, watching my brother walk and wearing an orange prison uniform. Our lives weren't easy while we waited for the trial. Lucas had to see a psychologist twice a month because he kept having nightmares and jumping at any loud noise. The scar on his forehead would heal, but the wounds in his head needed much more time. Amanda had brought Noah to the same clinic, and one afternoon, when I brought Lucas there, the 2 boys met in the waiting room and sat next to each other as if it were the most natural thing in the world. 2 kids sharing a pain caused by adults. Ryan sat in the defendant's row, head down, not daring to look at anyone. Dad called a few times during those 4 months, asking me to drop the charges, reconsider, give Ryan a chance. I wasn't stupid enough to fall for it again. The courtroom was cold and silent. The prosecutor stood to present the charges, bringing out Noah's medical records and projecting images of the bruises on his back and arms onto the screen. Dad sat behind him, looking older, hair grayer, back more hunched, eyes empty. I sat next to Claire, and Amanda sat in the row beside us, her voice clear and cold. The injuries on victim Noah Miller are at different stages of healing, indicating that this behavior continued for months. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was systematic abuse. The defense attorney stood, trying to turn the tables, pointing at me. "Your Honor, my client was the one attacked first. My client's brother assaulted him right in their father's garage." The prosecutor didn't flinch. "Attacked first? By whom?" "By a 9-year-old who slipped while kicking a ball. And your client's reaction was to hit an 11-year-old so hard he bled from his head, then grab his own son by the hair? That's the outcome of therapy." The defense counsel remained mute. Then came Noah's evidence. Because he was so young, the boy was allowed to speak through a pre-recorded video. The screen showed Noah sitting in a room with a social worker. His voice quivered, but was clear in every word. "Dad told me I couldn't tell anybody." Noah continued, eyes down. "Dad would hurt me when he lost bets, even when he was getting treatment. That day, Dad hit my cousin and made him bleed. I was so scared. All I wanted to do was save him. Then Dad grabbed my hair." I heard Amanda weeping. Claire clutched my hand tightly. I looked across at Ryan, who was burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The judge's voice was severe. "Does the defendant have anything to say?" Ryan looked up, stammering. I have problems controlling my emotions. I'm trying. The judge cut him off, his voice sharp and hard. During those 7 months of trying, your son continued to get hurt. Where was your effort? Ryan couldn't answer. Ryan Miller was found guilty of injuring children with 2 victims, aggravating circumstances for prolonged behavior, and abuse of family trust. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison, supervised therapy after release, permanent loss of custody rights, and a prohibition from contacting both victims. Ryan turned to look at his father one final time before being handcuffed and led away. His eyes seemed to want to say something, but no words came out. Dad sat there, tears streaming down his cheeks. For the first time in my life, I saw him truly grieve. After the trial, Dad approached me, his eyes red. Are you satisfied now? I stood, faced him, and replied, very satisfied. After that restrained response, I left the courthouse with Claire. When we got in the car, she turned to me gently. Are you okay? I looked out the window. In the parking lot, Dad stood alone next to his old car, shoulders sagging, looking half his size. I turned back to Claire. I lost a brother today. Not because he went to prison, but because I realized I never really had that brother to begin with. Ryan has been in prison for 9 months. I haven't visited him. Our lives are smaller, with fewer people, but far more tranquil. Lucas has completely healed. The scar on his forehead is fading. The nightmares became less frequent and then vanished entirely. My son is back to being the carefree 11-year-old I remember. Noah now lives entirely with Amanda. He no longer has to count down the days until he goes to Dad's house. He no longer has to hide bruises under long sleeves or lie about falling. Every weekend, Amanda brings Noah to my house to play with Lucas, and the 2 kids run around like glue from morning to night. Yesterday, I stood on the back porch, steaming coffee in hand, watching the 2 kids hurl snow at one another, their laughter ringing through the yard. Denver had just seen a massive blizzard after Christmas, and the entire yard was coated in white. Claire came out onto the porch, wrapped in a sweater, and stood next to me. She watched the kids rolling in the snow, making snowmen, then turned to me, a soft smile on her face. You see, kids are stronger than we think. Noah is completely different from 9 months ago. He laughs more, talks more, plays naturally like a typical 9-year-old. I nodded, not saying anything. Dad still texts me daily, begging to see his grandchild, to talk for a chance. But I don't answer. I don't know what more to say to him. Someone once asked me, "Don't you miss your dad and brother?" I looked inside the home where Claire was making supper, then to the yard where Lucas and Noah were playing in the snow. My family is right here, I said. A family is made up of people who defend one another, not those who injure each other and then seek forgiveness because they share DNA. Noah ran onto the porch, face red from the cold, holding a handful of snow. Uncle Ethan, build a snowman with us. We need a grown-up to carry the big snowballs. I laughed, set down my coffee, and told him, all right, but I'm terrible at building them, you know. Noah smiled from ear to ear, snow dripping from his fingers. That's okay, Uncle. I'll teach you. I burst out laughing and walked out into the yard with the kids, my boots crunching on the fluffy white snow. I'm not sure if I made all the right or incorrect choices that day, but when I watch Lucas and Noah smiling together, truly happy, I know one thing I want to share with you through this story. Some individuals never change, no matter how adept they are at pretending. And there are things more essential than attempting to maintain a family that just exists on paper. I have 2 pieces of advice for you. First, don't let your desire to believe blind you to the warning signs. I understand everyone wants their family to change. Dad wanted to believe, and I tried to believe as well. But looking back, we missed too many clear signs. Ryan was still constantly checking his phone, drinking beer when friends pushed it into his hand, and having explosive reactions when things didn't go his way. Second, I need to be honest about what happened in the garage. I used violence on my brother, and I won't sit here and say I regret it, because all I saw at the time was blood on my son's forehead and my nephew's terrified face. But I need you to realize one thing. It wasn't the correct approach. If you're in a similar situation, call the police, get the victim to safety, and let the law deal with the abuser. I was fortunate to receive leniency for protecting children in an emergency. But things could have turned out very differently. I could have been prosecuted, lost custody of my son, and turned myself from protector to defendant. Don't take matters into your own hands, as I did. Violence breeds violence, and you won't always be as fortunate as I was.